I think the thing that struck me the most was I was looking to see how much of his off-the-dribble game would translate to the NBA, but specifically how much they would let him play like that. And it seemed like if they're going to go through Wemby, they're going to let him be Wemby. And Kyle, do you think that sort of style of play is what he is going to have to do to succeed in the NBA, or is he going to have to learn how to be a traditional big man first and then do that stuff on the side?
Situational.
Yeah.
I don't think that he's going to live with the ball in his hands full time. I think he's going to have little compartments of his game like every great player. I personally think we're going to see the pick and pop stuff.
Yeah.
He didn't shoot it well tonight. I think he's going to be a decent rim roller. I think eventually the best thing for him might end up being like a slot operator like KD, except, where he doesn't have to go, because there were a couple different times where there were, Charlotte, which is not a good defensive team, not a good basketball team, even by summer league standards.
They were gonna watch it. Mitch Kupchak's probably walking right behind us.
Yeah, my eyes were bleeding. I kept dabbing them during the game, but I kept a handkerchief just for that for the Hornets games. But no, I think eventually the thing that'll make sense for me is that let him operate in that Dirk KD area because he's so big, and I really do think the passing is going to come along. He can pass over the top of those lanes, and I think that's going to be a great. I don't know. What do you all think is going to be the main operating area for him? I don't know.
To me, he's going to be more of an AD finishing type, right? Be a devastating screener, and his roll game is going to be tough because guess what? When you try to switch a guy on a Wembanyama pick and roll, and it's a 6'2" guy, that's not going to work for you when they throw that lob pass up. That's foul after foul, and I think he's going to eventually develop a nice catch and shoot, pick and pop thing. I don't know that I think he's ever going to be some on-ball demon. I don't see that for him.
Draymond definitely does not see that.
I saw that clip, but Draymond was like, I'm going to get into that guy.
Dudes are going to get under him.
Yeah.
He's right.
And again, but I don't think he needs to become some incredible one-on-one low post beast or one-on-one face-up killer to do that. I don't think he needs to eat that way primarily to become a great player because, as you said, he's probably going to become a definitional, generational defensive player. So if he can become a very high-end offensive big and be that level on defense, this is Hall of Fame stuff.
Yeah.
This is so I wouldn't be too bad about that. But I will say this for last, because I was talking to some of my friends who are they're not casual NBA fans. These are guys that have league pass or watching it every single night. And these guys are he's gonna drop 15, 16 a game next year. I'm like, guys, this is the NBA. That's not going to happen. Not on the Spurs. I think on a different type of team that would just allow him to come out and play Wemby ball, he might be able to do that on inefficiency. But I don't think the Spurs are going to ask him to start playing and developing terrible habits just so he can score.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's probably going to walk into maybe the blocks record next year by simply parking himself in front of the hoop. What I thought was interesting, though, is it seemed like a lot of what he had success with in this game was him dribbling into a post-up, and he was physical enough that he can create some space for himself and then finish with his giant go-go gadget arms. Is that possible against an NBA defender like a Draymond or someone who's stout enough that's able to, at the very least, know the angles going into that? Or is that Summer League mirage?
I think it's funny you mentioned AD because I think a lot about, we had unique looks at AD early in his career. I got to see him at Kentucky up close, very invested in everything that happened with him. You got to see him in New Orleans. There was a little bit of just the bag of bones, just kind of coming at you constantly, not relenting at all, playing through the contact in a way. Chet has some of that too. Wemby displays, and I've said this in different places, but he displays that physicality where he can take a hit and still finish with touch. Whereas he doesn't wilt and fall back. I think early on in his career, we're going to see a lot of that. I mean, we're going to see, it's going to be like baby horse, kind of what a baby deer. He's going to be awkward. 15 to 16. Was that their optimistic projection or was that
optimistic?
Yeah.
No, they were just he's going to fall into 16 points a game in the NBA. This is what people think about Wemby, that against NBA half-court offenses, he's just going to easily and efficiently drop 16 points a game.
Well, if he shoots as many threes as he probably will, he'll probably get 15 a game from that.
I'm skeptical.
Okay. Well, it's funny because Baby Deer was what Kenny Payne, I believe, called young Anthony Davis at Kentucky. So.
Subconsciously got that one there. Yeah. It's I don't know. I mean, early on, I don't know. He's going to have some moments where he's going to fall and we think he's dead. There's going to be there's going to be stuff like that.
Sure.
But I think the thing that I think is valid concern is tonight as a microcosm of the conversation going forward, which is like, if he's just going to be that, if he's just going to be somebody that looks like a shooter, is a hypothetical shooter, and he's inefficient, it's like, I don't know. Is it at that point, is he like at peak form, like a Porzingis type, who also is just a higher level defender on the other end? That's still an amazing player.
Yeah.
If you think about like defensive anchors who are also offensive primary options, flat out, bar none, there just aren't many of those guys. Like historically, there just aren't.
Yeah, and again, we got to keep this in perspective. The guy's 19 years old. By the time he's 24, 25, we're going to be talking about a completely transformed player on both offense and defense, to be quite honest. I think he'll be a lot stronger. Because you mentioned AD. Like, AD is somebody who now plays with a lot of physicality and is actually strong. When you see him horsing guys.
Big shoulders.
When you see him horsing guys on the offensive rebounds against certain matchups. These are things AD was not doing very early on in his career. He plays very physically now. And I think Wembanyama could do that, but at 7'5", right? And that's a hard thing to stop.
It'll be an interesting case study for how teams approach building up a modern big. Right, because AD famously was sent into the post with John Calipari, which he did to bigs all the time. And he was often derided for that, Calipari was, because then Cat and AD eventually just explored the wonders of their body and they became all these like versatile bigs, right? It seems like we're past that, but how much does Wemby need that as a foundation before he goes on and does this other stuff, or couldn't he do the other stuff and then build that other stuff from behind?
What Kyle thinks.
I mean, in terms of like a back to the basket game, I mean, I could see you see baby hooks. I guess it's a matter of him just rim pressure, flat out rim pressure. Like, how often is he going to be able to just take like Euro to the, like, I wonder about his center of gravity in that situation. In that situation, you wonder if he ends up being like a Porzingis again, like somebody who just is playing with his back to the basket. He can shoot over people. Maybe if he gets a step on somebody, he goes all the way to the rim, but I just don't expect him to be like constantly living around the basket. Because not many players do that today, period. It's like Jokic and Embiid.
Right. And that's why I'm less concerned about a quote-unquote post-game or bag. Can you force smaller guys, much smaller guys, to foul you when you're down there? To me, if he can draw fouls against smaller bodies when they try to switch a 6'6", 6'7", rangy guy onto him, if he can make them pay where it's like, I'm close enough and I'm so easily able to get off a touch shot over you that you have to foul me to stop it, that's enough. I don't expect him to be Jokic and Embiid. He doesn't need to do that in today's game. He can play with talented enough, ball handling guys that'll get him the ball in good positions. To me, it's the Porzingis. Porzingis comes up a lot for me because of what happened in Dallas and why they traded him, was that at certain points, Patrick Beverley was able to guard him on key possessions and key switches in the playoffs, right? He wasn't a guy that could draw two, and he wasn't a guy that could punish a smaller guy. And so if your second guy can't even do that, Luka sets you up beautifully 6 feet from the basket with Pat Bev on you, and you don't finish, you draw a foul, that becomes problematic. I think he's going to be able to pass that Porzingis threshold. And even when you hear about people who are optimistic about Porzingis in Boston next year, they cite his numbers drawing foul close to the basket this year, those advanced metrics, to say, well, actually, he was killing switches this year, right? And so I think, to me, that's going to be the ultimate indicator, more so than being some dream shake machine. Like, come on.
I feel like the more we're going on here, we're using our hands more on the desk, just really exploring the space, just like our friend Wembanyama.